What is it about trade? And so here's the amazing thing. He talked to Democrats about this who are concerned that they have not been on top of this trade issue for many decades, and they think Donald Trump's really stolen a march from him. What is it that Donald Trump's saying about trade that's starting to resonate among white working class voters?
Well, if you look at the trade issue, one of the reasons why it appeals so strongly to the working class is because, as usual, everyday voting people understand what the political class does not understand, which is that manufacturing is the backbone of a healthy middle class. And so if you look at polling data and you ask people what industry they think is most important for a healthy economy, they almost always say manufacturing. And the reason for that is because manufacturing is an industry that can create a job for people who don't have a high school or a college education that can support a family long term. You need to have a line of work in a healthy economy where people who don't have college degrees can support their families. But the benefits extend out beyond that, because when you have strong manufacturing in a community, then other industries thrive as well, and wages go up across the board. So it creates strong communities, it creates strong states, it creates a rising standard of living. I mean, the easiest example I can give people to understand that is to look at Detroit during the time when we were exporting products across the world from Detroit, and then now when we aren't. And the difference is horrifyingly stark. I'll just give one more example. I was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania the other day. Johnstown is a small Pennsylvania town that was once an example to the world in terms of steel production. Several of its steel sites are considered historic landmarks. Some of the first steel production in the United States took place in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It really was one of the strongest, most vibrant towns in all of America. And around the 70s and 80s, it started to economically collapse as a result of the loss of its steel industry. And what's important to understand is that you'll hear snarky, what we'll say is pro-offshoring types say, well, you want to defend the steel industry, you probably would have defended the buggy whip industry too. And that's such a stupid comment, because steel hasn't disappeared. People are still buying steel. Millions and millions of tons of steel is being produced. The problem is not that steel isn't being produced. The problem is that it's not being produced here in America. Johnstown and towns like it all across America never had to lose their steel industry. They lost it only because our politicians surrendered it to Chinese steel dumping, to foreign currency manipulation, to unfair foreign subsidies. We need steel now today more than ever. The only reason why we're not producing steel in America is because our politicians let them.
What about the guys in the op-ed page of the Wall Street Journal and in certain conservative publications and think tanks that say, hey, look, Jeff Sessions is a swell guy, but he's just an agrarian populist. And he's on the wrong side of history. These are just great forces of history, and this whole globalization movement is really it's been building now for 30, 40 years, and it really is the wave of the future, and you guys are just trying to stand athwart history and scream stop.
Well, and the irony is that manufacturing jobs are high-tech jobs. The United States should be the number one manufacturer in the entire world, hands down, because if you have the best workers, which we do, and you have the best technology, which we do, then you should be leading the way in manufacturing. You should be able to produce the best goods at the best price and win. And we're more than capable of doing that. The only reason why we're not is that other countries are cheating, that other countries are taking advantage of us, and that we're signing trade deals that are completely one-sided. And so that's just terrible business. I mean, if you run a business, if you believe in the marketplace and you're signing a contract between two different parties, any contract you'd sign, you'd want it to be mutually beneficial. The United States is the only country in the world that signs trade contracts with other nations in which we don't require the other countries to open their markets, but we open our markets to their goods, and we don't enforce any of the rules or terms or conditions.
Why is that? Why have we gotten to a situation these trade deals are so one-sided, and the other countries are picking us off, and we don't even the stuff that's in the contract is not enforced? What power in Washington and Wall Street is forcing that to happen?
Well, so there are people who make a fortune from offshoring. So if you are a company that, say, wants to move production to Vietnam, And you can make a lot of money from shifting your factory overseas to Vietnam, and then you donate to politicians to promote that kind of policy. So, I mean, as Donald Trump said, it's the greatest jobs theft in American history. And so I'll give you a good example of this. The Club for Growth, which is part of the, quote, Never Trump crowd, which has endorsed Ted Cruz. The Club for Growth, in 2011, when we were trying to stop Chinese currency cheating and save, long-run, millions of American jobs, like those Johnstown, Pennsylvania steel jobs, the Club for Growth came in to try and stop us, to pour their money and resources into making sure that China could violate the conditions of...
Why would the Club for Growth, who says they're a free market economics group that tries to support free market economics policies like a lot of these groups do, why would they do that?
Because a lot of the groups that say they're in favor of free markets, as I said before, for commerce to work, you have to enforce rules. A lot of the groups that say they're for free markets are in fact for oligarchy. They're in fact for rule by business. They're in fact for the idea of an economy run by special interests for special interests that is not a free market economy at all. And I will just note, and this is what's important that I wanted to get across today, we have a primary coming up in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's the state that's been hammered by offshoring. They've lost 70,000 jobs to China since China's entrance into the World Trade Organization.
So what is understanding trade's big on the upper Midwest? But with Donald Trump, besides saying, hey, I'm going to bring 10 million, besides yelling over his lunch pail, right, that, hey, I'm going to bring 10 million jobs back from China, right? The Chinese are going to sit there and go, hey, Donald, that's a great idea. Why don't we send you 10 million back of our best? What they do is they go to the Spratly Islands and put in missiles. They start taking sandbars and turning them into basically stationary aircraft carriers. They call the South China Sea now an ancient territorial sea of China. They're not sitting there getting ready to high five Donald Trump. What has he said? What is he? Because people call all the time. They come to the site, say, hey, they love the direction of Donald Trump and they love what he has to say, but they don't see any specifics. Particularly that the Ted Cruz folks say, hey, look, this guy may say some interesting stuff, but there's nothing to back it up, and particularly no policy chops and no thinking. So what is his specific? What when you talk about Donald Trump, what specifically is he talking about to bring these jobs back?
Well, if you just address currency manipulation, that alone would bring back as many as 5 million jobs, depending upon some estimates. And that's just one step. If on top of that you were to renegotiate our trade deals like NAFTA or our trade deals like, for instance, China's entrance in the World Trade Organization, then you could save millions more jobs. The key
is he going to put that? Are you saying he's going to put that all on the table? He's going to put NAFTA. He's going to put their entry to the WTO, which people said, hey, they really haven't followed any of the rules. People look the other way. The same thing with NAFTA. Are all those trade deals, not just TPP? We'll get to that in a second. But are all the old trade deals we signed, they're all going to come up for renegotiation?
Yeah, he said that he will be willing to renegotiate every trade deal we have that's not working for the American people. And I would just make this point, which is that the fundamental economic principle that everybody misses is that the United States has all the leverage. If you have a huge trade deficit, what that means is the other country needs your consumers more than you're using theirs. So I'll give you an example real quick with Mexico. Everybody says about the border wall, I say, you can't threaten Mexico with a tariff. Mexico is completely dependent upon us economically, selling their cheap goods into our markets. By comparison, our high-wage country sells much less to their country, hence the $60 billion trade deficit with the two countries that Donald Trump talked about. So if we were to raise a tariff, they would have no economic incentive to say, we'll raise a tariff too, because they need access to our market more than we need access to their market. So we have all the leverage.
Okay, so we've got the leverage, and we can cut smarter deals. We're limited for time here, so I got two things I want to go to. Number one, everybody, when I cut the TV on, they're saying, Donald Trump is going to sit there and start a trade war. He's going to start trade wars with all our trading partners. We're a trading nation. You got the Club for Growth guys, you got the Cato Institute guys. We're all sitting there going, Donald Trump's going to start a trade war. The economy is going to melt down. What do you say to that?
Well, ironically, it was Mitt Romney himself who said that we don't have to worry about a trade war because right now we have a trade surrender. Mitt Romney apparently forgot his words before joining the Never Trump movement. But every other country that we're talking about here is fighting against us economically in their own interests, which is their right, and then we're surrendering to them. So we have a trade surrender right now, and the surrender needs to end because we basically auctioned off our entire middle class, and that has been economically devastating. Wisconsin, for instance, has seen its middle class shrink more than any other state in the country, according to Pew Research. Now, one very important point. We talk about Club for Growth. We talk about these other groups that are out there pushing offshoring. There's a reason why they're aligned behind Ted Cruz, and this needs to be understood. The reason why Obama trade became law is because of Ted Cruz. During the early pivotal moments of the fight, when Jeff Sessions, and I was working for him, was out there warning the country about the living agreement, about the transnational commission, about the loss of U.S. sovereignty, Ted Cruz not only wrote an op-ed with Paul Ryan giving the pact urgent, needed momentum, but Ted Cruz also did media and interviews arguing against Jeff.
But didn't he see? But then, because of the work of Senator Sessions and others, didn't he actually see the error of his ways, and then at the appropriate time, or at least later, say, "Hey, look, Mitch McConnell and other guys lied to me. This was," and he came out against TPA, and he's come out against TPP strongly.
No. He rallied support for the pact sufficient to ensure its passage, and he cast the initial vote for its final passage when he and everyone else believed it was the final vote. All of the lobbying he did on behalf of the pact guaranteed its passage. If he had been silent, we probably would have defeated it. If he had lobbied against it, as he was morally bound to do, we would have defeated it. He was the difference maker.
Okay, I'm sure we're going to get into all this in the run-up to Wisconsin, where I'm sure it's going to be a huge issue. Before I let you go, you were the immigration, also the immigration guy for Senator Sessions. What did you do on TV over the weekend that caused this firestorm? Miller, you're usually a pretty detailed guy about trade and immigration, and now seeing you've gotten into the, what did you do on CNN yesterday? Got everybody's head blown up.
Well, I prized myself on my affability above all else, but you're generally a pretty nice guy. But you had everybody on CNN all worked up. But I made the point, which is a very serious one, and it really was first given to me by Laura Wilkerson, who helps to reset the moral compass of the nation. Laura Wilkerson is a courageous mom whose son was murdered by an illegal immigrant, and Breitbart readers will be familiar with her because her words have been covered on Breitbart's page over the years. And Laura Wilkerson was at a rally that I was also at in Florida, and she said that she was amazed that political pundits were more upset about Donald Trump's, quote, tone than they were about the murder of her child. And that really struck me. And that's sort of when I had this thought in my mind that our moral compass in Washington, D.C. is so broken that we get more upset about phony accusations about Mr. Trump's tone than we do about the fact that children are getting murdered by illegal immigrants. And so that really stuck with me, and that's what came up at the panel. And then secondly, we talk a lot about the crucial issue of having respect and for women and ensuring women's dignity economically in the workplace and in all other respects, as a crucial issue, a pillar of Western civilization, of tolerance and respect. And I made the point that if this is an issue that we're concerned about, then we also have to have an honest conversation about Muslim migration and Islam's poor record on women's rights. And that was not a conversation that anybody on the panel who was part of the anti-Trump crowd.
Yeah, no, that blew people's heads up, but we've got that up on Breitbart. You can see. Okay, Stephen, we're going to have you on later in the week. I want to talk more. We're going to have some Cruz people on too to talk more about this issue of trade and where the separation is from Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. But thank you very much for joining us on Breitbart News Daily. Really appreciate it. I know you guys are incredibly busy.
All right, great. Thank you.